بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. Human being is constantly moving and evolving from the state of being to the state of becoming, or as the Qur'an puts it at times, from the state of bashar to the state of insan. Bashar being the biological and the physiological characteristics of a human being, to the state of insan that is evolving into an ethical, moral, and spiritual human being. Ramadan is one of those opportunities to enable us to evolve into incrementally grow to a more ethical, more moral, and more spiritual human being. Islam, as you know, is a religion of love, a religion of mercy and compassion, even though often at times it is presented as a religion of punishment, of vengeance, a religion that is full of God's wrath and so on. The Quran says that God's mercy is all-encompassing and boundless. It says, وَرَحْمَتِي وَسِعَتْ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ. His mercy embraces everything. وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. The Prophet is portrayed as somebody who was sent as a mercy upon the entire universe, not just the world, but the entire cosmos. However, the mischaracterization of Islam as a religion of punishment and divine wrath is partly because the time when the Prophet came to Mecca in the 7th century, the pagans at that time did not believe in Akhirah or in the life after death or in the notion of human accountability and human responsibility. This is what they said. The Quran says the pagan Arabs would tell the Prophet, وَقَالُوا مَا هِيَ إِلَّا حَيَاتُنَا الدُّنْيَا نَمُوتُ وَنَحْيَا. They would say there is nothing after this life. نَمُوتُ وَنَحْيَا. We die and we live. وَمَا يُحْلِكُنَا إِلَّا الدَّهْرِ. Nothing destroys us except the destruction of time. That is to say that they had no concept of an afterlife. They believed in a kind of a hedonistic ethical framework, that is to say that they should maximize their pleasure, they should maximize their happiness in this life to the maximum, because there is nothing after the life on this earth. And it's very much defined their ethical framework. That is to say, there is nothing but this life, and therefore they should maximize their pleasure in this life. As such, one of the major tasks of the Prophet was to convince the pagan Arabs on the concept of day of resurrection, day of judgment. And that is why you see so many reminders in the Quran that talks about the day of judgment. For example, there are many surahs, many chapters in the Quran that talk about the day of judgment, the day of resurrection. For example, Surah Al-Qiyamah, the chapter on the day of judgment. Surah Al-Ghashiyah, the chapter that talks about the overwhelming event, meaning the day of judgment. Surah Al-Waqi'ah, Surah Al-Haqqa, the chapter that talks about the undeniable reality, meaning the day of judgment. You see mention of these particular terms in the Quran. For example, Yawmul Hisab, the day of accounting, Yawmut Taghabun, the day on which a human being feels aggrieved or feels cheated, meaning to say that we feel aggrieved that we have lost the opportunity of time to do good things in this life, and we realize this to the full extent on Yawmut Taghabun, on the day of judgment, the day of grief. Yawmul Khuruj, the day on which the human beings will emerge from their graves. Yawmul Jam, the day on which we are all gathered, meaning the day of judgment. Yawmul Kabir, the momentous and the most important day, the day of resurrection. Yawmul Fasl, the day of separation, which means the day on which everything will become clear cut for us, the day of discernment, the right from wrong, which means the day of judgment. And Yawmul Khulud, the day of everlasting life, meaning the life of eternity, the afterlife. All these reminders of the day of judgment and the potential divine punishment is very much linked with the worldview of the pagan Arabs at the time, that they did not believe in the afterlife, and therefore there is this emphasis in the Quran about the day of judgment, about the potential divine punishment. And this somehow asymmetrical and disproportionate emphasis on the day of judgment has to do with a particular mindset of the pagan Arabs of the time, but it does not mean that Islam is all about fear of God or fear of the day of judgment or fear of the day of accountability or the fear of wrath of God. But the main focus ought to be on the love and the mercy of God, which is all inclusive, all embracive. It encompasses all of us. And that is one of the purposes of sending the Prophet. وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. That is, we have sent you for nothing other than being a mercy for the alameen, for the cosmos. And as such, we are supposed to dialogue with God. We are supposed to engage in munajat, engage in a kind of an exchange and a communion with God, because he's a source of mercy and a source of love. And thus, I want to talk about today and take excerpts today from one of the supplications found in Sahifa Sajjadiyah, in the collections of the du'as ascribed to our fourth Imam, Imam Zainul Abidin. In this du'a, he says, du'a on maqarimul akhlaq, du'a on perfection of human morals and ethics. He says, وَبَلِّغْ بِإِيمَانِ أَكْمَلَ الْإِيمَانِ. He beseeches God to make our iman reach the zenith. Akmalul iman, the level of complete perfection. You will recall the Quranic verse which says, Al-yawm akmaltu lakum dinakum. God says, on this day we have perfected your religion. Akmal. Likewise here the Imam is saying, وَبَلِّغْ بِإِيمَانِ أَكْمَلَ الْإِيمَانِ. I want my iman or conviction to reach the level which is the level of perfection, on the point of climax. وَجْعَلْ يَكِينِي أَفْضَلَ الْيَكِينِ. And make my certainty that kind of a certainty that is أَفْضَلُ الْيَكِينِ, the best and the most meritorious kind of certainty. As you know, we have different gradations of yaqeen. We have ilmul yaqeen, ainul yaqeen, and haqqul yaqeen. We want to have the yaqeen which is the best of the best. وَانْتَهِي بِنِيَّتِي إِلَى أَحْسَنِ النِّيَّاتِ. And make my niyyah, make my intention the best of intentions. That is to say, when we do something, our niyyah should remain uncorrupted, it should remain unpolluted from any other kind of motives that would somehow distort or corrupt our intentions. وَبِعَمَلِ إِلَى أَحْسَنِ الْأَعْمَالِ, which means make my works, make my a'mal the best of works, works that are going to promote human welfare, works that are going to promote human kindness and human civilization. He continues, وَعِزَّنِي وَلَا تَبْتَلِيَنِّي بِالْكِبْرِ. Make my status of honor higher in the sight of people. Exalt me in the estimation of other people. Raise my rank, but do not make this a cause of pride for me. وَلَا تَبْتَلِيَنِّ بِالْكِبْرِ. Do not make me arrogant as a result. وَأَبِّدْنِي لَكَ وَلَا تُفْسِدْ إِبَادَتِي بِالْعُجْبِ. Make me worship you, but do not corrupt this act of worship to make me engage in self-righteousness, self-admiration, self-praise, that I worship God so much. I'm so pious. I am so righteous, and so on. Self-admiration. وَأَجْرِ لِلنَّاسِ عَلَى يَدِي الْخَيْرِ. And let nothing but good flow from my hands in terms of service to humanity. وَلَا تَمْحَقْهُ بِالْمَنِّ. And do not make this service to humanity become a cause of making people feel obliged. That is to say that I have done a good deed. I remind people of how good I have been to them. وَهَبْ لِي مَعَالِيَ الْأَخْلَاقِ. And make me and grant me and endow me with the highest level of morals and ethics of akhlaq. وَأَصِمْنِي مِنَ الْفَخْرِ. And protect me and preserve me from self-glory, self-glorification, or vainglory. He says, وَلَا تَرْفَعْنِي فِي النَّاسِ دَرَجَةً إِلَّا حَتَتَّنِي إِنْ دَ نَفْسِ مِثْلَهَا. Do not raise me a single degree in the sight of people, إِلَّا حَتَتَّنِي إِنْ دَ نَفْسِ مِثْلَهَا, before you lower me to the same degree within myself. This will protect us from arrogance and pride and self-glory. وَلَا تُحْدِثْ لِي إِزًّا ظَاهِرًا إِلَّا أَحْدَثْتَ لِي ذِلَّةً بَاطِنَةً إِنْ دَ نَفْسِ بِقَدْرِهَا. And do not bring me in the estimation of people, or exalt me in the estimation of people, to a rank until you have first debased me, you have lowered me within myself to the same degree. This is once again to protect us from the major affliction, the major spiritual disease of self-adoration, self-praise, and self-worship. And interestingly, he says about our life, he says, وَعَمِّرْنِي مَا كَانَ عُمْرِي بِذْلَةً فِي طَاعَتِكَ. Make me live as long as my life is promoting goodness, is promoting obedience to God, obedience to Him and to Him alone. إِذَا كَانَ عُمْرِي مَرْتَعًا لِلشَّيْطَانِ. However, if my life becomes a pasture, a landscape for the handiwork of shaitan, فَاقْبِضْنِي إِلَيْكَ. In that case, take me away back to you. Seize me to yourself. قَبْلَ أَنْ يَسْبِقَ مَقْتُكَ إِلَيْهِ. Before your anger and your animosity overtakes me. أَوْ يَسْتَحْكِمَ غَضَبُكَ عَلَيَّ. Or your wrath becomes firm onto me. In another passage, he says, make the good words and deeds that I do seem insignificant, even if they are great. He says, وَاسْتِقْلَالِ الْخَيْرِ وَإِنْ كَثُرَ مِنْ قَوْلِي وَفِعْلِي. Even if my words and deeds are humongous, are significant, make them, in my estimation, seem minuscule and insignificant. وَاسْتِكْثَارِ الشَّرِّ وَإِنْ قَلَّ مِنْ قَوْلِي وَفِعْلِي. And make my evil or sinful deeds seem bigger, magnify them, make them far more significant in my eyesight than they are in actuality. And finally, he says, وَلَيْسَ عِنْدِي مَا يُوجِبُ لِي مَغْفِرَتِكَ. We say to God, there is nothing that I have done which entitles me and warrants your forgiveness. وَلَا فِي عَمَلِي مَا astahiqqu bihi afuk. And there is nothing that I have done for which I can claim, for which I can say that I am entitled to your forgiveness. وَمَا لِي بَعْدَ أَنْ حَكَمْتُ عَلَى نَفْسِي إِلَّا فَضْلُكَ. And after I have made a judgment about myself, I come to a realization, and we say to God that there is nothing that I can appeal to you other than to appeal to your bounty, to appeal to your mercy, and to appeal to your forgiveness, as you are the one who is the most forgiving and the most merciful. Wassalamu alaikum